Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your Erik Ten Hag press conference reaction for Manchester United's game against Aston Villa. Many of you might quite rightly be saying, why are we doing this on a Thursday afternoon, Mark? We normally do it on a Friday. Well, answers on a postcard, not too sure what the real reason is for it, but it has just happened. Erik Ten Hag delivering another injury setback and also some very interesting read between the line comments, which we will adapt upon. But I've got to say, actually, I quite like a Thursday afternoon press conference. I suspect this will not continue for Manchester United, although with no European football, maybe it will. But I like a Thursday afternoon press conference because I do a Thursday night preview. So I actually know the team news when I'm doing my predicted lineup, which is great. So I quite like it. Lots to get involved in. Make sure you get your comments in. Please do smash a like on video. Let's see if we can get 1,000 likes while we're live. Day off for all tomorrow, says Sam C. Could well be the case, I suppose, because give them a day off tomorrow, train Saturday, play Sunday. Could be the way it works. But I don't know. But let's get into this. There is another injury setback for Manchester United. And I say, I think it's a big setback. And I think if you read between the lines, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Aaron Wan-Bissaka returned to training today. He's missed the last few games and he is out. Also, we will be talking about quite a few questions. He was asked about what he thought about the new stadium. He was asked about the future of Varane and Johnny Evans and whether they'll get new contracts, and he gave a very blunt answer to that. He spoke about the young players and how they need to develop more. He spoke about the centre-back situation, and he spoke about the form and how important this Aston Villa game is. So let's get into it. We'll start off with the big injury setback, which is that Wan-Bissaka, who's just returned from an injury, had to stop training today with another injury. So unfortunately, two things I'm going to say. First of all, we were incredibly unlucky, or whatever you want to call it, in the first half of the season with injuries. A lot of people have spoken about when we get our players back, and I and many of you said, what makes you think we're suddenly going to get all our players back? I think it's actually more likely that we'll keep on picking up injuries in the second half of the season because of fatigue, etc. And so it has come to pass. We're not going to get to a point where we get our players back, are we? We're just going to pick up more injuries. Mount and Malacia are still out. Wan-Bissaka's now out. Martinez is out. So we've still got 4 significant first-team injuries, and apparently we've got everybody back. We're not going to get people back. And this is just another thing, an example of it, isn't it? This injury issue is huge. But why is the Wan-Bissaka injury such a big setback, I hear you say? He doesn't even play at right back. Well, if you listen to one of the questions Ten Hag was asked, and we'll talk about this in more detail, he was asked about Martinez and how we're going to cope and keep this momentum going without having that really important breaking the line, step forward, left-footed, left centre-back. Erik Ten Hag said, look, I've got all my other centre-backs fit, Lindelof, Maguire, Varane and Evans. I can work with them. I can develop them to be playing in a better way. But I've also got Luke Shaw who can do that role. But he can't use Luke Shaw there, can he? We actually cannot use Luke Shaw at left centre-back. Figure it out. It's a massive blow. You can't play Luke Shaw at left centre-back. And Luke Shaw is the closest player we've got to Martinez in his ability to bring the ball out from the back. He's left-footed. He's a very similar player to Martinez, I think, when he plays at centre-back. We can't do it because we haven't got a left-back. We can't put Delo at left-back because we haven't got a right-back. So we can't actually put Luke Shaw at left centre-back, which is the closest player we've got to Martinez, if we want to replicate doing that. And so it's a major setback. It's a major setback because you can't actually play Luke Shaw there anymore because he's got to play at left back. And also, with Wan-Bissaka injured, we've only got Delo and Luke Shaw. We've got no other fullbacks. So yeah, we're obviously gutted about the injury to Martinez. Of course we are, but we're really short at fullback as well. So who knows how long this Wan-Bissaka's injury is going to be? Who knows what the problem was with Wan-Bissaka for the last few weeks? But yeah, it's just look, I'm not blaming anybody on this. It's just massively frustrating that this season has been like this. Deck says, what about Amrabat? You could do that, but of course, what I'm talking about is specialist fullbacks. Anyway, want to get into the injury situation first, then we'll move through the topics. He was asked about Martinez, said it's going to be a big miss. Obviously, he's only just come back. It's a big blow for the player, big blow for the club, fans, etc. Absolutely spot on. He did say the only real positive is that he should be back before, it could have been a much worse injury. A question was asked, and I found this quite interesting. You might do as well, depends how, whether you find these things interesting. A question was asked about whether they could have prevented the injury being as bad as it is by taking him off straight away. Obviously, we all remember Martinez, hobbling down the touchline, then coming back on and then having to come off. So the question was, if United had taken him off straight away, would the injury have been as bad? And, is that a regret? No problem with the question. Very good question. But actually, I think Ten Hag answered it in the way that you have to answer it, which is what he's supposed to do on the touchline in that situation. Martinez wanted to go back on. Players pick up knocks all the time. I've seen Alexis McAllister the other week. He went down with a bad tackle on his ankle. You think he's going to come off. Hobbles off. Next minute, he's playing for another half an hour absolutely fine. So, look, you can have a pop at our physios. You can have a pop at Ten Hag. You can have a pop at Martinez if you want. But Martinez has had a bang to the knee, walked down the touchline and said, I'm okay to go on, ran around for a few minutes and realised it's something serious. This happens all the time. I know there are mistakes in relation to what happened with his foot, but with regards to the knee injury, we'll be taking all if buts and maybes, exactly, just Kevin. If you took every player off because they've had a knock, we'd have no one left. It's just one of those things. And I don't blame anybody for, not taking Martinez off straight away. You're driven by the player as well. The player, you can't know what the damage is until you do a scan. So you're driven by the player in that. And if it's a concussion, take him off. But I think in that situation, there's not a lot we can do. As I said, Malacia and Mount are still out. No return for them. I would just plant this seed. How long are these two going to be out for? We've had the return of Martinez, Casemiro, Luke Shaw. I presumed Mount and Malacia were going to be part of that wave of returns. Still no return. Malacia has not played all season. We heard about Mason Mount that hopefully he'll be back before the end of the season. How long are they going to be out for? It's interesting. Very, very interesting. Anyway, moving on. Get your questions in, of course. He was asked about what he thought about a new stadium for Old Trafford. Again, we've seen today the plans for what a new stadium would look like. Heard Gary Pallister talking about, maybe this is the right thing to do. Everybody's entitled to an opinion on this. I find it horrific to think that we could leave Old Trafford. I'll leave it at that. Erik Ten Hag said, regardless of whether it's a new stadium or a renovation, you can't say it's not a positive. It's an expression of ambition, which is always a good thing. And I agree with that. The fact that we're even, doing this now is obviously a positive. He was asked about the form improving. This was really interesting. We'd scored 18 goals in our first 18 games, apparently. We've scored 13 in our last 5, which is a massive improvement, of course. Form's improved and the goals improved. What are your thoughts about that, Erik? He said, look, players need time. Rasmus, Garnacho, they need time to develop. They're young players. But more importantly, they also need a team around them. If you look at this season, they've not had that team around them. We've had to change it. We've had a lot of adjustments, and those adjustments have impacted on how we've played. Whereas in recent games, we've had a bit more of a stable team. Personally, I think Shaw, Martinez and Casemiro have been a massive change. And with that stability and balance, we've played in a certain way that has led to more chances and more goals. I would still say that Rasmus only had 2 shots against West Ham and scored 1 of them. I would still say against Newport, he had to generate his own chance. And I would still say against Wolves, I don't remember him having that many shots there either. So we're not out of the woods yet in relation to, we're creating loads of chances, but there has been more improvement with a more settled team. Exactly. Anything on Amrabat, says Sufyan? Well, I think Amrabat's back. He was sent off for Morocco. They're out the AFCON last weekend. He's back. He must be back in training. I've not seen any pictures of him, but I don't think he's injured or anything. So Amrabat's back. Yeah, I mean, look, I think most people have written Amrabat off. I'd love it. I'd love him to turn it around, but at least it's an option. It's another player. Yeah, definitely. Easy says, bad decision to leave Martinez on. We were winning and we have problems in the position. Poor decision. There we go. So yeah, I agree. I don't know what your thoughts are on that by Ten Hag, but I think he's absolutely correct. And I think he's warned about this. We've had so many changes, so many injuries. And what we're seeing now is we're scoring more goals and we're getting better results because we've got a more stable 11. And I personally think Casemiro, Shaw and Martinez have been the fundamental change in that. He was asked about the centre-back situation and how can we play and what he's going to do in relation to that. He said, look, I've got lots of options. I'm confident that we can keep the form going. And obviously I could use Luke Shaw there, and I can also develop my other centre-backs to do that role. So it's about making better decisions when we're on the ball. Casemiro is the first player to assist Rasmus in the Premier League this season, according to ESPN, says 5T. That's got to improve. That's got to improve. Absolutely got to improve. Two good topics coming up here from Ten Hag. The first one is, well, we're going to talk about what he said about Johnny Evans and Varane getting a contract. But first of all, he was asked a question, is Aston Villa a must-win game? This game, I'm going to be previewing it tonight at 8 o'clock. This is, in my opinion, the biggest game of the season for Manchester United, and I think West Ham was at the weekend, and it rolls over. But this game is massive. The gap to Villa is 8 points. If they beat us, it's 11 points. Forget about it. You're not catching them, not in this league. But if we can bring it down to 5, it's game on. So this is absolutely massive. You can't say it's not. You can't say a draw might be okay, but losing it is just detrimental to trying to get into the top 4 or anything like that. We've still got an outside of the Champions League. If we lose at the weekend, we're not getting it, in my opinion. So this is what Ten Hag had to say. Every game now is a cup final. I said this to my players last month. Every game is a final now. This is a final. Villa have a clear ideology in and out of possession. They know what they're doing. Their players know their job. They're a really good team, but have no doubts about it. This is a cup final for us. And look, you know, that gives me goosebumps. That builds this game up. Absolutely huge. Bring it on. Can't wait for it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I don't want to delve too much into it because that's what the preview is going to be about tonight. Excited about that. But yeah, it's good to hear your manager calling it out for what it is. And as we know, Villa good at home, lost their last 2 home games though, so it's going to be big. Yeah, look, can't wait for it. Also, centre-back situation, direct question. Johnny Evans and Rafael Varane out of contract in the summer. Are you wanting to give them a contract in the summer? Ten Hag said a decision has not been made about them yet. Is that a very blunt clue that we're going to move them on? Or is that an acceptance, as I think it is, that how the hell can Erik Ten Hag sit in an interview on February the 8th and say, I want to give Johnny Evans and Rafael Varane a contract, and then when we release them in the summer, he looks like a complete and utter prat. So I think that some people might see that as Johnny Evans and Varane are off in the summer, and maybe they are. But also, let's also acknowledge that any second now, and I mean like any day really, we're going to get this big drop about a director of football. That director of football is going to make the decisions with Ten Hag and other people about what we're going to do in the centre-back area with Maguire, with Lindelof, with Varane, with Evans. So how can Erik Ten Hag sit there and say what we're going to do with these centre-backs? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a very big chance that Varane and Johnny Evans will go in the summer. And I will say this, as a Rafael Varane fan, and he is the best centre-back we've got at Manchester United. I'd argue that with anybody. But he played against Wolves on Thursday and he couldn't play against West Ham. That's not doable next season. We can't have that. So I think there's a realistic chance that Varane will get moved on. And he's had a bit of an up and down season with Ten Hag as well. But ultimately, if you can't play Thursday or Wednesday, Saturday and Thursday, Sunday, then it really doesn't matter how good you are, is it? You've got to build something for the future. So we'll see what happens with that. He was asked about the young players as well and what's going on with the young players and what are your thoughts on the young players. He said, look, they are enjoying playing for Manchester United. It's an adventure and they're in it together. But he also said, the future is bright for Manchester United when it comes to these players and other players that we've got coming through, but we have to use and develop them correctly. There is still a lot to learn. They're doing well, but things can get better and we've got to continue to develop them. I think that if you're thinking of replacing this manager, this is an area that you've got to look at. Erik Ten Hag, without a shadow of a doubt, is a developer of talent. You know, look at what he did with Rashford last season. Rashford was dreadful that season before Ten Hag came in. And what did he get out of Rashford? This nonsense that that Ten Hag doesn't improve players is incredible to me. Just because we had a bad start to the season, he can't improve players. It's like people have a brain wipe of what happened last year. And also have a brain wipe of what we've done with Mainu, Garnacho, Rasmus now. I think Ten Hag is exactly the type of manager we need when it comes to developing these young players and demanding of them. He might not work with some of the senior players. I get that. You know, maybe, you know, we were talking about the break of communication with Varane. And maybe Ten Hag is not a great fit with these Ronaldo, De Gea. Maybe Ten Hag is not a great fit with the more experienced, they've done it players. But is that what United need? Because what we need is young players to be disciplined and professional. And whilst there may be lacking issues with Ten Hag with some of the senior players, the way that the younger players are reacting to him is massive. And at the end of the day, what's more important? Ten Hag being able to work really, really well with senior players that are in their 30s, or Ten Hag being able to work with players in their teens and 20s who, if he builds a relationship with them, they could work together and become senior players. So, you know, it's that balancing act, isn't it? But I think with regards to Garnacho and the young players coming through, I mean, give Ten Hag his credit. He's very, very good at this. And I think stepping away from that would be a big risk, whether you're from Ineos, because we've got this exciting trio of Mainu, Højlund, Garnacho. There will be others. But if you replace Ten Hag, is the next manager going to have that pedigree to develop young players as well as Ten Hag is at the moment? And that's not something you can take for granted. Last week, some of you were saying you want Jose Mourinho. I mean, Jose Mourinho would be catastrophic for the young players coming through. He's just not that manager. It's not what he does. He doesn't do that. Ten Hag being able to work with both, that's how you win the league, says Jakob. Erik Ten Hag's game management is abysmal, says John. Footy fans' recency bias is even more pronounced, Mark, says Donny. Problem is we don't have a style of play yet, says Valroy. Well, we won't have a style of play until we have a squad. I don't think you can have a sustainable style of play until you have a squad. You know, I think if Pep Guardiola had a bench of players like we have, he wouldn't be able to take Phil Foden on and carry on playing the way they play. If he had a squad of players like we've got, he wouldn't be able to take off John Stones and keep doing what John Stones does. You have to build a squad. Klopp's got a squad. Pep's got a squad. We've barely got a first 11. I think we've got 9 players that fit Ten Hag's system. There's a couple of players in that first team I think he'd like to change. And I think most of his bench he'd like to change. So we have to build a squad. That's what we have to do. But to have 3 young players like we've got in the first 11 at the moment, I think is getting the credit and exposure it deserves. I think it's a big thing. Steve Cottrell says United was always the club that bought young players, though, says Steve. Yeah, and look, Rasmus is a young player that we brought in. Mainu's a young player that we brought through. I'd like to see that continue. Don't Tottenham have a style of play with all their injuries, though, Mark, says United we stand. But why are we comparing ourselves to Tottenham? Since when have Tottenham been Man United? Have you checked their... You know what? Tottenham's trophy drawer is like what happens when you go to IKEA. It's just empty cupboards. There's nothing in them. Tottenham's history is not Manchester United. Tottenham's fan base is not Manchester United. Tottenham's expectation is not Manchester United. Managing Manchester United is not like managing Tottenham. Tottenham came into this season with zero expectation. Most people were putting Tottenham at 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. They've overachieved and just done a great job. Let's see what he does next season when the expectation changes. Manchester United, it's win, 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 win. We have standards. I don't understand why people compare Tottenham to Manchester United. It's like getting in a Ferrari that's got a dodgy engine and then comparing it to a Vauxhall Astra that's got a good engine. What? Oh, he's driving well. Completely different circumstances. I know, you know, Brighton last year with De Zerbi, very, very good. This year, people are saying De Zerbi's shit. Let's see what Ange does next season. Serp says they have at least they have a style of play. Mate, you hold your opinion, absolutely fine. My justification of our style of play is, look at us in the last 2 games when we had Martinez, Casemiro and Luke Shaw. Much improved. Look at us without those 3 players, no style of play. My argument would be, we don't have a player who can replace Martinez. We don't have a player that can replace Casemiro, and we don't have a player that can replace Shaw. I also don't think we've got a player that can replace Rasmus. I don't think we've got the right back. Our centre-backs have been very injury-prone. The midfield is ridiculously weak for players. You're not going to implement a style of player on magic. I think what you're talking about is, well, Tottenham have got a style of play. Brighton have got a style of play. Liverpool have got a style of play, but they've got a set of players that probably can do that style of play. What you're trying to say is that Scott McTominay should be able to play like Kobe Mainoo. Johnny Evans should be able to play like Lisandro Martinez. That's not how football works. It's not how football works. I literally just explained it to you. You give Pep Guardiola our bench, he won't get them playing tiki-taka football, because if he could, he wouldn't spend £100 million on players. He'd just go and buy Preston players. Not every player can play every style of play. It's as simple as that. You can't walk into a club like Stoke and say, right, we're playing tiki-taka high-pressing football and we're going to win the league. It's not like that. You still have to have the right set of players. And how can you be such a hypocrite to say United have accumulated a selection of players that don't actually suit the way modern football is? We've not got rid of the deadwood. We've still got Mourinho signings. We've still got Ollie signings. There's probably still some Van Gaal signings here. We have a mismatch of players that if you put them for sale, good footballing sides aren't going to buy the players that we want to get rid of because they don't suit that style of football. Simple as that. Tottenham did have to change their style of play due to injuries. People just don't like to admit it, says James. And United blame the injuries for crap football. Spurs got the same amount of... right, okay. Not idiots in the chat, not talking about it anymore. If you're comparing Spurs to Manchester United, you're an absolute prat. You just are. There's no correlation. Get Ange to come and manage Manchester United. Unless he's got the 11 players that we need, he won't be able to do it. You're telling me Ange is going to play a high line with Lindelof and Maguire. You're telling me we're going to press and move the ball quickly with McTominay and Eriksen. Come on. Screw your head on. I know it's been a hard week, but switch your head on. We haven't got the players to do it. That's why we can't do it. Simple as that. You could put Amrabat on the left, says Teddy. It took Fergie 3 years, and during that time, fans wanted him out. He stayed, and the legend began. Look, there's Ten Hag out, and there's Ten Hag in. We shouldn't fall into the conversation, because if we lose on the weekend, the Ten Hag out lot will be vocal again. I see it. I see it on the internet. I see it on video reactions. There's people out there that barely can raise a smile when we score a goal because really they want the world to burn because they want to be right about Ten Hag out. It's fine. Everyone's got a different opinion, but you're not going to turn me against this manager and the fact that when we have our big players, we're better. It's as simple as that. And you know what? I think that we're heading in the right direction. I think we have to keep Ten Hag, and I like what's happening with the youth, and I think this is the manager to back. I won't make that decision. Ineos will. I just hope they make the right one. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm about to drop a big video on That's Football, so get ready for that. I'm just about to record it now. Incredible stupidity that we'll have to expose on That's Football. But tonight at 8 o'clock, it's the preview of the Villa game. I can't wait for this. Biggest game of the season. Can't wait for it. Join me live at 8 o'clock. Thanks to the legends for tuning in. That's you. The issue is that Ten Hag has too much on his plate and thus can't focus solely on coaching. With a proper structure and a fitter squad, he'll be fine, says Colin Fix and Felix. And I think we can give Ten Hag a chance and see where he takes us, says Martino. And until there is a proper structure in place where we can play proper football, that's the time to judge Ten Hag. Thank God he's put young players in the side, says Akash. Thank you very much, everyone. Absolute legends. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Smash a like on the video. Take care. I'll see you soon.